Disclaimer: this podcast is intended for viewers above 13 due to the graphic nature of this murder case. Viewers' discretion is highly advised.
Hello, my name is Vienna Raymonds of the United Nations Department of the Unsolved and Unexplained, a department dedicated to archiving the unsolved crimes of the world. Yes, we have one of those. The head of the department, Avery Lagrasse, has recruited me as an intern archivist to assist the department after a recent natural disaster had completely destroyed our archive room where we kept all the case files. I will be tasked to read out said case files and record them for organization purposes, and so we don't have to dig through 300 years worth of files ever again. I will be reading out a case file for probably one of the most well-known unsolved crimes in the Western world, the Black Dahlia, 1947, Los Angeles, California, the United States of America.
Welcome to The Unsolved, a podcast where Officer Vienna Raymonds will be taking you back to the classic stories of cold murder cases. Episode 1: The Black Dahlia.
Statement begins. On the morning of January 1947, the body of one 22-year-old Elizabeth Short was found in an abandoned lot in 3800 Northern Avenue, Los Angeles. The body was discovered by Betty Bersinger and her young daughter Anne on a morning stroll. Short's naked body was severed into two pieces by her lower abdomen. Her body was oddly posed and had been completely drained of blood, leaving her stark white. Her body was so pale, Bersinger had initially mistaken the body for a discarded store mannequin. This is what Bersinger said upon reporting the body to LAPD.
I glanced to my right and saw this very dead white body. My goodness, it was so white. It didn't look like anything more than perhaps an artificial model. It was so white, and she was separated in the middle by gods. It was horrific.
When LAPD arrived at the crime scene, CSI found that Short's intestines were taken out and tucked under the bottom half of her body. Her mouth had been slashed open at the corners and up her cheeks, along with several cuts on her legs, wrists, neck, and thigh. When brought to the coroner's office, this is what was found of the autopsy.
Short's body was separated via hemicoparectomy. Her blood was completely drained, and the lack of bruising suggests that dismemberment happened post-mortem. This procedure was definitely done by someone with surgical knowledge. Any other murder would have left her body either in one piece or had done an obviously bad job of separating it. But whoever mutilated her, they knew what they were doing. This is the work of a surgeon, or at least a medical student. No average person would know how to do this. Draining the body completely of blood is no easy task. They cleaned her too, like they were embalming her. Blunt force trauma to her head caused small amounts of bleeding. She was hit multiple times, but it wasn't enough to cause a fractured skull. Killer was probably scrawny, couldn't hit hard enough to cause anything bone damaging. Both corners of her mouth have been slashed, let's say 3 inches on each side. Someone must have been a fan of Kuchisake Onna. The damage to her head, and the excessive amounts of bleeding from the lacerations. Cause of death? Hemorrhage or shock.
After the discovery of Short's body, the media had dubbed her the Black Dahlia, due to the trend of giving news headlines nicknames at the time. After word spread of her murder, an envelope arrived at the LA Examiner's office 9 days after Short was murdered. Inside was a letter, along with her social security card, Short's birth certificate, photos, and an address book with multiple pages missing. All the items were cleaned of fingerprints. However, one partial fingerprint was recovered on the letter itself, but the fingerprint wasn't in the LAPD police files. Even after cross-referencing with other state authorities, still weren't able to find a match. Hundreds of people were questioned, but all leads kept coming to a dead end. All 75 men in Short's address book were ultimately questioned, but still no leads were ever found either. LAPD even went as far as to interview 300 USC medical students for some sort of lead, but all came up empty. The 7 decades this case has been left cold, there have been 2 semi-confirmed suspects for the Black Dahlia's killer. The first being Robert Manley, who had been the last person to see Short alive. Their relationship began in San Francisco. Manley had driven Short home from a bus stop one late night, and from then on, frequently went on dates whenever Manley was in San Francisco. In fact, when Short was evicted from her apartment in San Francisco, she called Manley for help. On the evening of January 9, 1947, Manley had dropped Short off at a hotel, the Biltmore, just a week before her dead body was found in that lot. He pled his innocence and took 2 polygraph tests which confirmed his innocence and completely deducted him as a suspect by the LAPD. Manley died from an accidental fall in his Anaheim apartment on January 9, 1986, 30 years to the dot to the anniversary of when he last saw Short alive. The next suspect is the most well associated with the Black Dahlia, one George Hodel. He was an extremely wealthy Los Angeles doctor who was well connected throughout the US. Having gone through medical school, Hodel would have had the skill to do the dismemberment of Short. Not a single detective is more sure of this than his own child, Steve Hodel. When digging through old belongings after Hodel's passing, he had found pictures of what seemed to be Elizabeth Short, suggesting that they knew each other at the time. Hodel even owned a car that bore a striking resemblance to the car spotted at the crime scene. An old recording of Hodel was recovered by the DA, and this is what was stated.
Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They can't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary because she's dead. I'm sorry, detective. I'm not the one you're looking for.
However, in 1950, either due to the lack of evidence, the LAPD being corrupt at the time, or Hodel's connection within the justice system, this lead was abruptly suspended. I truly wonder. The case had been opened for 70 years, and yet not a single person had been able to solve it. In my humble opinion, the likelihood of Hodel being the culprit is extremely high from all the evidence given, especially his connections throughout the justice system. But unfortunately, we're never going to know who really killed Elizabeth Short. For now, her name will be immortalized as the Black Dahlia, and I hope that one day she'll get her justice. Statement ends.
Here's a word from today's sponsor, Warung N23, aka The Orange Stall. They offer a huge variety of dishes ranging from satay pleching to their most popular dish, Japanese katsu curry. And also, you can't miss out on their weekly free appetizers, so make sure to check out their stalls every Friday. In the next episode of Unsolved, we are going to discuss the classic century-old unsolved case of Jack the Ripper. For more updates, previews for upcoming episodes, and behind-the-scenes shots, you can check out our Instagram page at unsolved_Regents. This episode of Unsolved was produced by Arena, Kimi, Kanya, and Jungo. It was written by Arena and edited by Kimi. Vienna Raymonds was voiced by Arena, George Hodel was voiced by Jaden and Mrs. Berzinger, and the coroner was voiced by Lynn. The artwork of this podcast was created by Kanya. Music was produced by David Wesleyan, Luke House, and Real Tunes Studios, and the sound effects are from freesound.org and produced by Kimi. Special thanks to our guest actor, Jaden and Lynn, and Mr. Nick Trainer, our media studies teacher, for guiding the production of this podcast. This has been a Regents Media production.